Welcome back into the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. I am Steven Serda, joined as always by my guy, Rocky Magaña, Kramer Sandstone in the background, helping us keep this thing moving. On Sunday evening, after another Chiefs victory in week 5 of the NFL season, they take down the Minnesota Vikings 27-20. Rocky, we got a lot to get into. It was a stressful game. I don't think I enjoyed this game very much for the most part. And there's a lot of layers as to why I didn't enjoy this game very much. But at the end of the day, the Chiefs did enough to hold off a strong Vikings offense and put up enough points to come away with a victory in a tough road test, even though I know the Vikings are 1-3, but they're a much better team than their 1-3 record right now. They moved to 1-4. Chiefs moved to 4-1. Impressive win overall, but still kind of a frustrating and nerve-wracking day for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, it was frustrating and nerve-wracking, and it shouldn't have been because, yeah, okay, they're a good offense, but, like, are they a good offense? Like, it was a stressful day, but who on their team actually balled out? Like, you look at
You're talking about the Vikings? The
Yeah.
Vikings have a very good offense.
They do have a very good offense, but who balled out today? Like Kirk Cousins passed for 284 yards. Alexander Mattison had 26 yards on the ground for 3.3 yards rushing. Jordan Addison led the team with 64 yards receiving. And yeah, Justin Jefferson got hurt, but before that, he was 3 for 28, on 6 targets. Like nobody on their team actually balled out today, but yet the game felt so much more stressful than it should have been, I think, because the Chiefs also, on top of it, they got 3 sacks, but I didn't feel like the pass rush was all that effective today. And they shot themselves in the foot a lot. Like, I'm sorry, Uncle Dave not being ready for a fake punt, and also then the fair catch interference shot the Chiefs in the foot. The Chiefs had a lot of opportunities where they kind of just hurt themselves. But make no mistake, the Vikings didn't play an exceptionally good football game today. Like, they weren't that good. The Chiefs were the better team from start to finish. The Chiefs should not have let them be in this game as much as they were.
So I agree, and I totally agree with you about the Chiefs pass rush. There was just not enough pressure on Kirk Cousins today, considering that Vikings offensive line is nothing that should intimidate you whatsoever, and how well the Chiefs pass rush has played this season. That's part of my frustration from today's game, but I think we have to kind of start with the offense in this game because that's what everybody is talking about coming out of it. And I already mentioned Justin Jefferson gets hurt, leaves the game with a hamstring injury. I'm sure there'll be an update on him as he's an absolute superstar player, had by far his worst game of the year against the Kansas City Chiefs secondary. But we'll get into the defense. We have to address the offense to start things off, and it's because Travis Kelce obviously goes down in the first half, non-contact injury. And, I have a lot of thoughts about this and the way that, one, it was handled on the television broadcast and the way that we react to it in the media and on social media, on Twitter and all of that and all the speculation and I really, really despise the superstar player gets hurt. Let's assume it's worst case scenario and put that out there instead of just waiting for the team to report what's going on. I really, really despise that about the NFL community right now. It's something that I really, really don't like about how we navigate injuries in the NFL. But Travis Kelce goes down, non-contact leg injury, and obviously has to go to the locker room before the end of the first half. Comes out second half, is not out there for the first possession, working it out, eventually returns to the game, catches a touchdown pass, and has a couple other big plays in the game, and still looks effective. So it's reportedly an ankle injury, something that he obviously played through in the second half, and he was cleared by the medical staff to return to the game. So hopefully it's something that isn't going to be a long-term thing. But this goes back to something that we've talked about on this show, Rocky, and something that I've talked about a ton on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network after Travis Kelce suffered a knee injury before week 1. Stop making him practice all the time. He's 34 years old. Let's get him some limited veteran rest days throughout the week. Please, Andy, for the love of God, he's getting old. He can't take it anymore. So while everything's okay. It seems like Travis Kelce is healthy. He came back in, made plays, helped the Chiefs get a win today. But everybody was freaking out in the first half. And that's part of what made this game so nerve-wracking and frustrating for me.
Well, and here's the thing is I was as guilty as anybody with the Travis Kelce like non-contact injury. It didn't look good real time. I tweeted out, non-contact injuries usually don't end up well. I was wrong. I overreacted. So, you know what, Travis Kelce, I'm sorry for underestimating you. My heart sank when I saw Travis Kelce hit the turf there, though. And I think that happened with everybody in Chiefs Kingdom. Like you see number 87 go down, like 15 or 87 go down as a Chiefs fan, and you're understandably like, holy crap, like this is no bueno. Like these are the two numbers we can't go without. Like these are our two dudes. We can't play without them. And you see that injury go down, and the worst case scenario goes through your brain. I was wrong. I'm glad that he came back. It seems like he just rolled his ankle. You can tape that up. Hopefully Thursday, we'll see what happens if he's available then. But he was able to play through it. I thought he cut really well, moved really well, was able to get a touchdown. So, I mean, Kelce's a gamer. Now, the thing about him getting a veteran rest day, here's my only pushback on that, is that he's on record on New Heights saying, like making fun of Jason Kelce for taking a veteran rest day, saying, I don't need a veteran rest day.
I don't care.
You're old. He told Jason, like, you're old, you're fat, you're a lineman. Of course you need a veteran rest day. I don't need a veteran rest day. Do I think you need a veteran rest day? Yes. Travis, for all of our sake, I think you need a veteran rest day.
Oh.
You're not as young as you used to be, bro.
And that's kind of apparent so far this season. Now, I'm not saying that, maybe he'll get healthy and there's no concern with him the rest of the season moving forward, but we're only 5 weeks into this thing. He suffered 2 different injuries now, 2 different lower body injuries. He just turned 34 years old. His birthday was just here recently. And it goes without, or it should go without saying, that he is the one irreplaceable part on the offense aside from Patrick Mahomes. Like, that's why my heart sank when he goes down. I despise the overreaction and the need for social media and just NFL media in general to immediately be like, oh man, heart goes out to him, season-ending injury. I absolutely despise that reaction. And I really wish people would stop immediately going to worst case scenario in these situations, because obviously he was able to return to it. And we don't need to do that immediately. But that's why it's so concerning, obviously, because he is not replaceable. There's nobody on this roster who can step in and fill the void that he would leave. There's nobody on the roster who steps in and has that kind of psychic connection with Patrick Mahomes that always seems to be open, always finds the open space in the zone and whatever. There's nobody in this thing that can make it work like Travis Kelce makes it work with Patrick Mahomes. And so the receivers, we saw a little bit more promise from them today. But again, they still weren't game changers. They still weren't game breakers. They still didn't do anything that made you be like ecstatic coming out of this game against the Minnesota Vikings. So if something happens to Travis Kelce, then it's massive panic on the offensive side of the ball. So thankfully, Kelce is healthy. Chiefs put it together and they did enough on Sunday to get a win. I just think that we really need to start having those conversations. And I'm gonna ask Pete if he will ask Andy Reid on Monday about getting Kelce some veteran rest, because for the love of God, that man's tired. He's been going for a long time. He's not missed any games ever in his career prior to this season other than the COVID year. And he deserves some rest because, he knows what he has to do out there on a weekly basis during a Sunday football game. So I'm not worried about his preparation or anything like that. But he is at the stage of his career now where it's perfectly reasonable to question how much longer he can hold up and play at this level, because even coming off of the knee injury, it's perfectly acceptable to say that Travis Kelce hasn't quite looked like himself so far through this portion of the season. He's been a little bit slower. I think that knee is bothering him a little bit more than they're letting on, even though they're not listing him on the injury report. And he's been fully participating in practice. At 34 years old, I'm learning this. I'm the same age as Travis Kelce. I'm trying to exercise and do all kinds of things that used to come easy to me they're not easy anymore. And the body hurts a lot more now. And it takes a lot longer for things to go away when they do hurt. So I just want to see a little bit more caution moving forward with the Chiefs Hall of Fame weapon, because they cannot replace him if he goes down. And today was a really good reminder of that when he left the game.
I mean, I'm 8 years older than Travis Kelce, Steven Serda, and there's a saying amongst me and my friends that once you turn 30, like in your 20s, you like jump off a skate ramp and you'll bust your knee and you'll rebound, you'll be back in like 2 seconds. Once you turn 30, if you hurt yourself doing something, you just look in the mirror and say, "This is permanent." Like, this is me now. Like, I will limp every day for the rest of my life. And I think that might be factually true for Travis Kelce. Obviously, he's a much superior athlete than either one of us, and he'll be able to rebound back from things. But it's fair to ask at this point, like, I hope this isn't true, but his 1,000-yard season streak is in jeopardy. We're 5 weeks into the season, and he's not on pace. You know what I mean? And he does probably need the veteran rest that you're talking about. He's on his second injury of the season, and that doesn't mean he's not going to come back and maybe get 1,000 yards next year, even if he misses it this year. But throughout the like nobody had, like, he got injured his first year in the league, and then he's been healthy ever since. That's an unbelievable durability streak. Like, just by like sheer chance coincidence, he should have gotten blindsided in the knee by now in the NFL and had something happen over the course of his year. Like knock on wood, but Travis Kelce has been due for an injury for a while by NFL standards. Now, God, I hope that this is the worst that it gets, and that these are the injuries we're getting out of our system, and he's going to move forward and he's going to be great. But yeah, I do think Andy Reid needs to kind of mitigate the risk factor, because you're right. The wide receivers took a step forward today. I thought Kadarius Toney probably played his best game all year today, but he still had 26 yards receiving on 5 catches, right? Like, Justin Ross had a couple of really good looking grabs. He also had a couple of drops. Like, Rashee Rice had a touchdown, but like, none of these guys are like consistent game breaking players for you, on offense. The only guy that you can really count on when the chips are down is Travis Kelce. And that makes sense. Like, how many NFL offenses, like, you have Patrick Mahomes, future Hall of Famer, Travis Kelce, future Hall of Famer. How many NFL offenses have another future Hall of Famer on their team? Like it's rare to have 2 future Hall of Famers on an offense at one time, let alone, like, you're not going to have 3 future Hall of Famers on an offense. So yeah, you lose Kelce, you're smoked. And I think we saw that at the end of the first half. The Chiefs offense didn't look nearly as good as it had earlier in the game or later in the game when Kelce was on the field.
And offensively, I still think there's a lot of things to be desired right now from the Kansas City Chiefs. They don't look explosive. They're not getting big chunk plays down the field. A lot of the passes are short to intermediate stuff. And I know Justin Watson had a nice big play today that was a huge play in a moment where they really needed something to happen. And Mahomes just heaves one up to Justin Watson, and he goes up and gets it. And it wound up being one of the bigger plays of the game, because that was the drive that Kelce wasn't in. And they wind up going down and scoring on that drive, and it was massive for the Chiefs. But this is another game where Patrick Mahomes hits 10 different pass catchers, and somehow Travis Kelce winds up with 10 catches for 67 yards and a touchdown, and leads the way in the wide receiver room. Rashee Rice has 4 catches for 33 yards and a score. Justin Watson's got 2 for 56. One of them came on that big play. Justin Ross had a couple of nice catches, but also had a couple of drops. And Kadarius Toney comes away with 5 catches for 26 yards. Now, I agree with you. I think Kadarius Toney looks good today. And I think what was most encouraging about Toney was that he was not shying away from contact today, because they weren't using him downfield. They were using him in the short game a lot to try to just get him out into space and see what he can do with all of that twitchiness and all of his speed. And there wasn't a lot there that way today. But Kadarius Toney was getting out there, and he was taking a lot of hits and trying to play. So that makes me feel good about his health moving forward. But I think definitively, like we've been talking about for weeks now, Toney is kind of on a snap count. He has kind of got a cap that they're not willing to cross with him. And that's going to limit what he can do on a weekly basis, barring big splash plays and stuff like that. I think the more encouraging thing is that Rashee Rice continues to get more and more involved, and he looks good when he gets the ball, and his ability to break tackles and keep things moving after the catch is what's going to make him a really valuable asset moving forward. And it's really nice to see Justin Ross get involved. I know he had the drops, but the high point catch that he went up and got and climbed the ladder, went up and got the football with a defender all over him. That's something that the Chiefs have not had at the wide receiver position in a while, at least not consistently. And that's something that we know Justin Ross brings to the table. And so that's something that I want to see more of. This offense is still a very big work in progress in my mind, but we are seeing those guys take some of the steps. It's just that we had these questions all off season long. Like, what's this thing look like when Travis Kelce starts to slow down? Maybe right now he is just not healthy, and that's what's slowing him down, and that's what's hampering him. Maybe the age is finally catching up to him. But I think it's safe to say that I don't know if this thing is going to work quite as well if some of the young guys don't step up and make a dramatic impact, because you can't necessarily just believe that Travis Kelce is going to be this all-world weapon moving forward, especially if he's banged up at this age.
Well, and also let's not just avoid the elephant in the room. Yeah, Kelce is banged up at this age, and we talk about the development of the young wide receivers, and is Sky Moore what we hoped he'd be? Absolutely not. Does Rashee Rice need to take a step forward? Yes. Does Justin Ross need to improve his route tree? Of course. He's a kind of a one-trick pony at this point. But let's not avoid the $11 million elephant in the room, which is Marquez Valdes-Scantling. We say, oh, well, Marquez Valdes-Scantling is what he is, but he isn't even is what he should be this year. Coming in today, he's averaging less than a yard per route run. He has one reception for 12 yards. He has 116 yards receiving through 5 games this year for $11 million. For $11 million, bro. That's on average to get I'm not even doing the math on that, but we're talking like $1 million for every 25 yards you get receiving. Are you kidding me? That's the biggest racket in the history of football, and the worst contract for this season, per dollar for what you're going to get on the field if this keeps up. Of all the players that need to step up, he's never going to be your possession guy. He's always just been kind of like a down the field guy. But right now he looks horrible. He looks like a scrub. And dude, you're making $11 million for one reception and 12 yards. Get out of town, man. That is not, you need more out of Marquez Valdes-Scantling right now.
I think that there is some frustration with the way the Chiefs have handled him, at least from my perspective, because I think that he had some really key moments for them last season, and obviously some key moments in the postseason where he came up big and had a big game, had some monster catches and things like that. And I think that kind of carried over to this season, because I think prior to the postseason last year, you were just like, oh, easy offseason cut candidate, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And then he has the big postseason, has those huge moments. And I think that the staff kind of bought into it and said, we have this veteran presence and we really appreciate what he brings to the locker room. And we believe that he can, in another year with Mahomes, he can get these things going. But he's exactly who we've always known that he is, which is a totally inconsistent NFL wide receiver. And that's just who he is. The Chiefs overpaid him when they brought him in, and them keeping him around for another year, I think, just hurts the offense overall, because it's slowing the development of the younger guys that we've seen be on the field and see in small glimpses look like they can be more impactful than he is. And his snap count is going down, but he's still running 50 to 60% of the snaps on a weekly basis. He's still out there a lot and doing absolutely nothing in the opportunities that he is on the field. So I think that ideally we'll see the snaps continue to just go down for him. And ideally at this point, see the snaps for Sky Moore continue to go down. I've been the biggest Sky Moore supporter out there, but it's just not happening. He is not a contributor. He is not making an impact in any way on a weekly basis. And so Justin Ross and Rashee Rice look like the guys who have the biggest chance of maybe giving you something this season and being impact players outside of Travis Kelce, because that's what the Chiefs are desperately looking for. Like, I am becoming a bigger and bigger Justin Watson fan on a weekly basis, even though I don't think he's overly talented, because Mahomes does have this connection with him where he can make some big splash plays and he really likes him. So he'll find him down the field once or twice a game, but that never manifests into anything more than 2 catches for 55 yards or something like that. That's not enough. That's not going to get it done offensively when you're the Kansas City Chiefs. And so they still have a ton of things to figure out on the offensive side of the ball. I will say that I thought Isaiah Pacheco, I know the yardage didn't wind up getting there today and looking like a monster performance or anything, but Isaiah Pacheco continues to look like, outside of Travis Kelce, he might be the best offensive weapon that the Chiefs have right now, aside from Patrick Mahomes and Kelce, because he runs hard every single week. He had some nice gains today. He had 16 carries, 55 yards in the score. Only averages 3.4 yards per carry. But I also think the Chiefs didn't lean enough into the run at times in this game, where Pacheco was looking good and picking up chunk gains, but Andy Reid kept throwing. And I think some of that was game plan, where they're trying to attack this Viking secondary that has gotten torched all year long, as opposed to they've been a little bit more solid against the ground attack. So some of that is game planning by Andy Reid. But I thought Pacheco, if they would have kept feeding him the way that we saw them do last week, I think Pacheco would have wound up with a bigger day. I think another encouraging thing is that we can continue to see Isaiah Pacheco worked into the passing game a little bit more. He only had 1 catch for 9 yards today, but we've seen him catch more passes than he caught like all of last season, I think, through the first 5 games of this season. So that's an encouraging thing. And he's obviously somebody that needs to be more involved in the offense, because he continues to look like he can be a difference maker. And right now, I feel like the offense is short on difference makers.
The offense is short on difference makers, and you're right. I think Isaiah Pacheco is an emerging star at running back. Yeah, his average per carry wasn't there, but I mean, for the second straight week, out of the gate, he got the team going. Like that first drive, he looked awesome. And first half last week, he looked awesome. Like he's that guy who gets you, who shoots your offense out of the gate like a freaking lightning bolt. But like man, this wide receiver room, there was a lot of hype about it coming into this year about what we liked. But let's be honest for a second. Like Brett Veach is maybe a Hall of Fame GM. Like he's won 2 Super Bowls. He like he's the guy who spotted Patrick Mahomes. He built an amazing secondary, an amazing offensive line. The linebacking core is awesome. The front 4 is usually pretty great. They could have been better today, but they still got to the quarterback. Like he's built a great roster. But let's talk about can his team scout wide receivers? Like they drafted McCole Hardman, and we won't even get into who was drafted after McCole Hardman. They drafted Sky Moore. I mean, George Pickens went after Sky Moore, and he went off today. Like it's not like nobody knew who George Pickens was coming into the draft or in general. Like, and I, like Rashee Rice looks great, but like in retrospect, like are they good at like identifying wide receivers? They paid MVS all this money coming off a 460-yard season in free agency. Like can they scout wide receivers and surround Patrick Mahomes with the receiving talent that he needs? Because Travis Kelce was already here. Tyreek Hill was already here. Like, show me the wide receiver or tight end talent that Brett Veach's scouting team has identified and brought in. That's a difference maker. Like, I don't see it at this point. And I'm a huge Brett Veach fan. I mean, he's brought this team 2 Super Bowls, so we're splitting hairs at this point. But is that the blind spot for him?
It's, I mean, the wide receivers have not been good. The drafted wide receivers have just simply not been good. And yeah, that's not what you want to see. Rashee Rice is showing signs of promise, and I still think he could develop into something down the line. All of the positivity that I had about Sky Moore coming into the season is gone. I can't do it anymore. I can't keep talking myself into it. He is not a contributing player, and I don't think that he should be getting the amount of snaps that he's getting on a weekly basis. I know those have been going down. I think they need to go down more. Like, he's simply not accomplishing anything for them. And a lot of people I'm seeing in the comments, I want to remind you guys too, leave your comments, hashtag AP Rapid Reaction. We'll get some observations before we get out of here at the end of the show. If you're listening on the podcast, we'll have all the post-game press conferences immediately or for you immediately after the break. But Sky Moore isn't contributing at all. It's not even just that, he's had a big game and a quiet game, and then like these games where he disappears. No, he's absent all the time. Aside from like, I think he had one big 50-yard gain, and that was really just a busted play where Mahomes found him down the field and there was nobody around him. Like, he's not making plays at all for your offense. And so we're 5 weeks into this thing, and I feel like the Chiefs still don't have an offensive identity outside of Patrick Mahomes trying to make plays and holding onto the ball way too long because nobody's getting open downfield, and it's slowing down everything else and hampering everything else offensively. And then Travis Kelce doesn't quite look like himself, but they're still feeding Kelce and he's still making enough plays to be effective, but he doesn't quite look like the dominant Travis Kelce that we've seen in years past. Now, defensively, I think there was some frustrating things today, but for the most part, going against this Minnesota Vikings offense, going against Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Kirk Cousins, like, this is a Minnesota Vikings offense that is much more talented than their 1-4 record now. This is a Minnesota Vikings offense that can score with the best offenses in all of football, despite the fact that they don't have a particularly good offensive line. And I think the only frustration that I really had with the defense today, one, I think L'Jarius Sneed had a bad game today. He had some really bad moments. After really, I think he had a bad first game back after dealing with a knee injury. And then I think he had really been coming on in recent weeks. And I think he had a down game today. I think Trent McDuffie was great when he got the opportunities to make plays. And overall, I was pretty impressed with their secondary. Now, some people might be saying, well, they kind of let the Vikings back into it at the end of the game. I think the secondary was absolutely gassed. And that gets me to the thing that I was most frustrated with from the Chiefs' performance on Sunday, and that's the Chiefs' defensive line. Now, I know Chris Jones got a sack, and that was great. And Mike Dana gets a sack to end the game on fourth down. No time left on the clock. And I think they wound up sacking Kirk Cousins 3 times in total today. So they were getting a little bit of pressure on him. But this Minnesota Vikings offensive line is not particularly good. They've been giving up tons of pressure, tons of sacks on Kirk Cousins. And the way the Chiefs defensive line had been playing, I was expecting them to come out there and just dominate that offensive line. And I think the secondary played better than the defensive line did today. But then late in the game, you could see the secondary was absolutely exhausted because those Vikings pass catchers were running them all over the field. And the Chiefs defensive line just simply wasn't getting enough pressure on Kirk Cousins.
Oh, without a doubt, the Chiefs defensive line was the biggest disappointment for me today. You got nothing out of the edge rushers. Like all your I mean, so Mike Dana, but like George Karlaftis and Felix Anudike-Uzomah got nothing out of them today. Like, it just wasn't consistent. There was no consistent pressure on Kirk Cousins. He had all day to try to navigate the offense. And yeah, you can say that L'Jarius Sneed had a bad day, but he was going against Justin Jefferson more times than not, and Justin Jefferson finished with less than 30 yards receiving, right? Like the secondary, they were gassed at the end of the game. And you saw some other guys, kind of step up, like Jordan Addison had a decent game, but even he was still kept to under 70 yards receiving. Like, this defense did a pretty good job considering this passing attack. The Vikings passing attack is really, really good, and you shut down Justin Jefferson. I think if you come into this game and you say, okay, Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson are going to have less than 80 yards combined between the two of them, we're going to walk out of here with a victory. And that's what the Chiefs defense was able to do in the secondary. Now, they got to put more pressure on the quarterback. I'm starting to wonder if Chris Jones sitting out. This is kind of back-to-back weeks where he may have looked a little tired towards the end of the game. Is conditioning an actual issue for Chris Jones? Because he says it's not, because he was training in Miami, Florida, and that's hotter than it is in Kansas City, and yada, yada, yada. But, like, is it? Is it really? Can you really replace missing an entire training camp and all those preseason games and getting into football shape? Like, is conditioning still an issue for Chris Jones is one question. And then the other one is, can these defensive linemen beat man on man, like, without blitzing? Like can they just man up and beat guys on a consistent basis and put pressure on the quarterback? And they've done it thus far this year. But today, it just wasn't there, man. Like, and so I mean, you don't ever want to be a Debbie Downer on a victory. Like the Chiefs come out with a victory against the Minnesota Vikings, who are a potent offensive passing team. Their running game is garbage, though. Like, let's not act like Alexander Madison is anything to write home about.
Flaming garbage.
It is flaming garbage. So they're a one-dimensional team. So you should, in theory, be able to shut down the passing game, right? Which they kind of did. But like, why aren't you paying your ears back and just rushing the quarterback every single time then? Because Madison is not a threat, you know? So I don't know.
Yeah. So, yeah. And I want to be clear here. I'm happy the Chiefs won. Like, they're 4-1. They're taking on the Denver Broncos, who look like the worst team in football right now. Like, after what the Bears have done the last 2 weeks, like, Denver looks like they are the worst team in football. And I know the Chiefs game was on, but I don't know if you caught this, Rocky, but during that Jets game, Zach Wilson throws an interception. Patrick Surtain Jr. in celebration picks it off inside their own 5-yard line, runs it back to the opposite end zone in celebration while the Broncos are down 3 points and Russell Wilson has to take over at their own 3-yard line. And then they immediately turn it over. And it's another defensive touchdown for the New York Jets. Like, just an absolute dumpster fire of a team. So it should be easier on Thursday night when the Chiefs take on the floundering and tanking Denver Broncos. But this was the type of game where I think this Minnesota Vikings team is much better than their record. But it's just another game where I was really hoping we would see things open up offensively. And the defense was a little bit of a letdown, but I'm willing to let that slide because it's such a talented offensive unit. I think the pass rush should have gotten home a lot more. I think Spags was having to dial up blitzes way too often today to try to generate pressure, and that burned him a couple of times. That's not what you want to see, but there might be something to the fact that those guys are just worn out and they're tired. And I think no matter what Chris Jones says, there's nothing that simulates live action NFL games on Sundays and getting those reps. And so him not going through training camp, him not going through the preseason, I think that is something that affects you. And it might be a few more weeks even before we feel like Chris Jones is really in that football shape. But the most frustrating part was I've just been looking for so much out of this offense because we're so spoiled now and we're so accustomed to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid always figure things out. They will always make it work. But now, and I still have faith that they can become a better version of what this is right now. My only issue is that I don't know if they truly have the pieces this season to really be anything more than they are right now. And that's what's concerning to me. That's the biggest red flag I have coming out of this game because they got one monster performance against the Chicago Bears, who have one of the worst defenses in the league. And that's a team, when you're a team that's the caliber of the Kansas City Chiefs, you absolutely stomp that football team. That's what they did in that game. But before that, and since then, they've kind of looked like an NFL average at best offense. And that's not the worst thing in the world when your defense is playing like it's a top 5 unit. And the defense was still good enough today to get the job done. And I think the defense can still be a top 5 defense moving forward as they get some things figured out and get guys healthy and whatever. Like Nick Bolton still wasn't on the field today. And Drew Tranquill, after stepping in and looking good over the last couple of weeks, didn't have a great game against the Minnesota Vikings today. Drew Tranquill had some bad instances on Sunday. So I think the defense is still showing all the signs of promise, and I'm still very optimistic of that unit overall. But I am legitimately concerned about the offense moving forward and what happens when you start going up against these truly elite teams, when they go up against the Miami Dolphins, when they go up against the Buffalo Bills, when they go up against the Philadelphia Eagles and, Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow looked better today. He looked like that calf might be getting better. And if he is getting better, we know what a problem the Bengals can be offensively. I'm just questioning right now where the Chiefs have somebody who's going to step up and where this offense is finally going to take off and look like it can go to another level, because through 5 weeks, it looks like kind of an average offense. And I just don't see who's going to be the difference maker to change that anytime in the near future.
They don't have that guy on the roster currently, in my opinion. And you're right. This Chiefs offense looks like an offense that's good enough to win a mediocre to bad AFC West right now. Like, the Raiders are terrible. The Broncos are a hot mess. The Chargers are so-so, right? Like the Chiefs are going to win the AFC West this year, but do they really have the firepower, like you said, to go toe to toe with Miami and Buffalo, and you know, and Cincinnati when they're healthy, or even if they say they get to the Super Bowl, to run with the likes of San Francisco, right? Like right now, like can they win a 38-35 football game? Like I don't see this team putting up that many points. And you say, okay, well, like Mahomes said this week, like, okay, we're developing the receivers. It'll help them if I play better. But like, I just don't see this as that group of guys. Like Mahomes has always had at least one guy that he can go to, and it's always been Kelce. And if Kelsey's going to be kind of banged up and back and forth and not
Yeah.
quite himself this year, then what else? The whole league has been so long trying to catch up to the Chiefs that now they've caught them, and the Chiefs have taken a step back. Like that puts so much more pressure on the defense to perform.
I do think there's something to be said for the way that they've approached this in the post Tyreek Hill Chiefs world, where obviously last season it worked and it worked fine. And the Chiefs had this incredibly efficient offense. Travis Kelce was still an absolute superstar, but you're kind of playing with fire here where you're just banking on Travis Kelce being that forever. And he's 34 years old. He's not going to be that forever. And when he's not that dominant, always reliable, always on the field, never misses time, never gets injured. When he's not that, we see what this thing looks like right now. And it's kind of a product of their own success because they put all these investments on the offensive line. They have Chris Jones on an expensive 1-year contract. They bring in Charles Omenihu, and they're drafting and developing all these key members on the defensive side of the ball that look like impact players, and all of that's great. But offensively, it's lot of swing and misses at the wide receiver position since the Tyreek Hill era. And that's the discouraging part, is that for this offense, it seems to be able to just make it work with whoever they have out there. So far this season, it's been kind of working, but not working all of the time. And that's concerning. And I would say that through 5 games, it's a lot of instances of it just not working. And Mahomes not looking like himself, being inaccurate, not finding guys down the field, not showing chemistry with the pass catchers that are on the field. And that's the biggest concern that I have moving forward with them. But I feel like this was a super negative post-game show, and I really didn't want it to be. The Chiefs
are 4-1.
They get what should be an easy win on Thursday Night Football at home against the Denver Broncos. They should absolutely demolish that Denver Broncos team. They are hot garbage, and they just lost to the Jets and Zach Wilson, and they are getting absolutely trounced by everybody that they play right now. Sean Payton looks like a dumpster fire as a head coach. Russell Wilson looks totally washed up. That should be an absolutely dominant Chiefs victory, and I hope that it is, and I hope that they absolutely crush them. And then we get here on Thursday night, and we're like, everything's good in Chiefs Kingdom, and everything's great again. The offense is amazing. But this is just what I saw when I watched that game today, and it was frustrating. It was a frustrating game to watch. It was an annoying game to watch, and thankfully Travis Kelce is healthy, and hopefully on a quick turnaround, he's going to be ready to go for Thursday, because I'm curious how this thing's going to play out if for some reason he has to miss any kind of time here in the near future.
Well, and what we're seeing now is quite honestly the fruits of the Chiefs' success. Like in the heyday of Tom Brady in New England, a 12-win season wasn't good enough. Like you were expected to go and compete for a Super Bowl and most likely win a Super Bowl every single year. Now, obviously, he didn't win a Super Bowl every year, but every year that the Patriots didn't win the Super Bowl with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, the fan base felt like it was a letdown season, because that's what was expected, and rightfully so. And that's the expectation. That's the level we're at with Kansas City right now, where we expect to compete for a Super Bowl every single year, winning the division and winning 12 games. At this point, it's not the expectation. Like the bar has been raised to a point where it's not good enough anymore. Now, should it be good enough? That's an argument for another day. But at this point in time, the Chiefs have shown us such a high quality of product for such a long period of time that now anything less than that seems like a letdown.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm probably coming off as negative, and I really don't want to, because But it's just that the quality has always been so high. And last season, it felt like Patrick Mahomes' MVP year, no Tyreek Hill, and this offense is crisp and smooth and runs as efficiently as it ever has. You kind of just expect that on a year-to-year basis now, and it's just not really working that way this season. Now, I think Juju Smith-Schuster gave it everything he had last season and kind of fell apart this year, so it was really smart to move on from him. I was never in favor of bringing him back, so I don't think that it's the Juju Smith-Schuster less wide receiver room. I just think that coming into the season, having that many questions in that room and at that position was something that we should have taken a lot more seriously than we probably did. And it continues to show up. It doesn't mean that they can't get better as the season moves on, but right now it's kind of a frustrating product to watch because we're so used to it all just working and kind of being easy. So Chiefs win, improved to 4-1. They are still have one of the top records across the NFL, and they have a Thursday night matchup against an absolutely garbage Denver Broncos team. So that should be an easy win on Thursday night football for this Kansas City Chiefs team. Hopefully they improve to 5-1, but let's get to some comments and observations before we get out of here. We're not going anywhere with this offense. Play calling seriously, especially when we play Miami, Buffalo, Philadelphia, even Cincinnati, will get exposed seriously. Well, I don't think it's even the play calling. I think it's the personnel. I think it has everything to do with what is happening on the field. And you're seeing a lack of chemistry with the wide receivers. You're seeing guys really struggle to get open. And that's the issue, is that Mahomes has always been able to rely on Kelce, especially like when he sees a team drop into zone. Kelce just kind of freelances and does whatever he wants, finds the open space. Mahomes hits him, big 20-yard gain. Sure. But we've seen him be able to do that with Tyreek Hill in the past too. And then last year, it was just everything was so efficient and everybody was where they needed to be when they needed to be there. And so it was just beat the zone, beat the zone, beat the zone. And then as the season went on, they got better at beating man coverage because they struggled with that early in the season. I think right now you're seeing guys not really beat either one. Like you're seeing Travis Kelce kind of do what he does and make some plays, but not doing it at the highest level that we've seen him do it at because he's injured, because he's aging, whatever it is. And Andy Reid's calling the plays. Mahomes is trying to run the offense. But if nobody is getting open anywhere across the field, that's why you're seeing Mahomes hold on to the ball for so long. I don't think it's play calling. I think it has everything to do with their skill position players not being able to get open and not being able to create things downfield.
Well, and coming into today, the Chiefs have been horrible against the zone. Like you're looking at like receivers like average yards per route run against the zone. We're talking like guys running like 0.49 yards per route run. Like Rashee Rice was the only guy I think who was over 1.3 yards against the zone per route run coming into this game. And then you look at Rashee Rice, and he's the only guy on the offense that doesn't have a single reception against man coverage in this offense. And you're like, okay, so like everybody can't beat the zone except for Rice, but he can't beat man. So like, what are we gonna do out here? And man, at this point, like you can enter a donkey in the Kentucky Derby, but it doesn't mean your results are going to be good. It's not necessarily the play calling. You just don't have the horses at this stage in the game, I don't think. And they thought they did. And a lot of us thought they did. But I mean, there's a big difference between preseason success and actually playing games that matter. And we all fell for the fool's gold of preseason success with this wide receiver room. And we got a lot of guys we got a lot of number 4 wide receivers on this roster.
And they're winning the games that they're supposed to win. So that's the good news. That's what you need. You know, they dropped the week 1 contest to the Detroit Lions. Obviously, we know that was a tough game. Offense, not overly impressive in that game. Dominate the Jaguars, win 17-9. Offense, still not overly impressive. Offense dominates the Chicago Bears, 41-10. Chicago Bears, one of the absolute worst rosters in the NFL. Beat the New York Jets, 23-20. Jets, incredible defense. We saw what they did to Josh Allen week 1. Zach Wilson also just has a game where he's playing absolutely out of his mind. And then they beat the lowly Vikings, who have a great offense, terrible defense, but the offense still doesn't look overwhelming. You can call it negative if you want. We're just explaining what we're seeing during these football games and why there's cause for concern on the Kansas City Chiefs offense moving forward, because this is a large enough sample size now where I feel comfortable saying these things about their wide receivers. Like it's a huge red flag for them moving forward. And we can't always just assume that Patrick Mahomes is going to make them better and turn them into some high-powered offense. Sometimes you just don't have the bodies to pull that off. Next comment from Pete. Good Chiefs win somewhat. Really liked what we saw with the offensive play calling being changed up with 2 to 3 step drop backs, killing them in the short game. We don't have a deep threat. I mean, I agree, but this isn't a new thing for the Chiefs offense. They've been doing the short intermediate stuff throughout the entire season so far. It's a reason that they don't look explosive. It's a reason that Patrick Mahomes can't take these deep shots down the field, because they just don't have guys creating separation and getting open. And the reason I was so optimistic about Sky Moore is because I thought he was going to be that guy. I thought he was a guy who could create separation at the line of scrimmage and get open with his route running. And it has not manifested at all. It just has not translated to the NFL. And maybe we were overly optimistic about a small school player coming from that kind of college program to Andy Reid's offense in the NFL. But I thought he had the tools there in place to really be a contributing player, and it just hasn't happened. And at this point, I've pretty much lost all faith that it's ever going to happen.
No, 100%. I think level of competition in college played a huge factor into Sky's success, especially when you consider his size and his agility and like vertical numbers. He came out of the combine. He didn't have good vertical numbers. He wasn't very agile. And I'm at the point now where give me level of competition and then show me college production, right? Like I'm done with small school at the wide receiver position, at least. Like there's other positions that are fine, like running back. Sure, that's fine. But a wide receiver, I want to see you beat Power 5 cornerbacks who are trying to press you. I want to see an SEC wide receiver that went against Nick Saban's secondary and had some success. Like show me that guy, and then I'll believe in him, because anymore, like we've been burned too much with these sort of guys, and you need more than that in today's NFL. Like you got to be able to hit on T. Higgins. You need to go find a DK Metcalf or a Puka Nacua, even right? Like or George Pickens. Like Chiefs passed on George Pickens to take Sky Moore, and he was taken right after Sky Moore. Like it's not like Pickens was an unknown commodity, right? And so, I mean, like I understand there's a sort of player you want and you're trying to replicate something, but go with the best player available, for goodness sakes.
And in all fairness, Sky Moore was kind of like a draft darling for a lot of draft analysts. There's a lot of guys that really liked him, and you look at the tape and you watch what they do and you say like that can translate to the NFL. Well, got a pretty large sample size of Sky Moore right now, and it just has not translated to the NFL. Sometimes it just doesn't always work out that way. It just doesn't always hit. The tape doesn't always translate, and it's a bummer right now. And I'm not saying Sky Moore's never going to turn into anything in his NFL future, but right now, I can't see a reason why he's getting as many snaps as he is on a weekly basis, even though those snaps have been going down anyways. Like I'm at a point where I'm just like, okay, they need to go down even more, significantly more. Like he needs to be running a quarter of the offensive snaps on a weekly basis, because that's the kind of player that he looks like when he's out there on the field for the Chiefs. But
him and Justin Ross need to flip their snap counts.
He's Rocky Magaña. You can follow him on Twitter at Rocky Magaña. I'm Steven Serda. That's where you can find me. You can follow Kramer at Kramer Talks. Chiefs win. Me and Rocky are feeling good. We just had to vent a little bit and get our frustrations about the team out. We're 5 weeks into this thing. They're still 4-1. They're still one of the best teams in the NFL, have one of the best records in the NFL. And they get a dynamite matchup against an absolutely atrocious Denver Broncos team on Thursday Night Football. So we're going to feel good by Thursday. We're going to go through all the tape here at Arrowhead Pride. So make sure you're locked into arrowheadpride.com for all of our coverage ahead of the game, everything that we have breaking down this game, and everything that you need to know coming out of this win over the Vikings. As always, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we are doing right here on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. And we will talk to you guys later on this week with everything you need to know ahead of Thursday's game against the Denver Broncos.